So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Andy. I'm the children's and youth worker here at the church. And my job this morning is just to kind of really set the scene before we have our baptisms this morning. So first of all, I'm just going to read a couple of verses from the Bible. These are from Mathew chapter 4, verses 18 to 22. They should appear on the screen behind me. And this is what it says. As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. "Come, follow me," Jesus said, "and I will send you out to fish for people." At once they left their nets and followed him. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. Well, before I started working here in the church as a children's and youth worker, I used to work in professional football. And in the last job I had in football, my primary role was to work as a physio, to do all the medical things within the team. But we were in quite a small club, and so I also took on a role as sort of assistant coach of our academy team. And what used to happen at matches with our academy team is there would be myself as kind of like assistant coach and Nathan, our academy manager, and we'd be stood on the side of the pitch as the game was going on. But the very first thing we do as the game started, within the first minute of the match, our aim was to try and work out what formation the opposition was playing. Were they playing 4-4-2, 4-4-1-1, 5-3-2, 3-5-2, 4-1-2-1-2? Like, who knows what formation were they playing? Our job was to try and work out in the first minute, what is the formation that they're playing? And even now, I can't get out this habit. Even when I go with my dad to watch Tranmere play, the best team in the world, or maybe the best team in League Two. Anyway, as we go to watch Tranmere play, I can't help myself, but in the first minute of the game, what's the formation that the opposition is playing? But this morning, I don't want to talk to you about formations in football. I just want to talk to you briefly about the formation of faith and how faith comes to be formed within someone, and also how we see faith formed through the story of the Bible. And if you've been a Christian for a long time, you can use this little three-step process in sharing your faith with others and explaining them kind of the story of the Bible. So this is the formation of faith. The first thing is that we were formed. We were formed. So in the beginning, God created the world. He created everything in it, and part of what he created in that was men and women, humans. So we were formed. We were created by God. And in that creation, that perfect creation, humans walked with God in perfect unity. And it was just a brilliant picture of what love looks like and what perfection looks like, what a relaxed life looks like, what peace looks like. It was all there in the very beginning of the Bible story. But although we were formed, after that we were deformed. We were deformed. Because that relationship that Adam and Eve, the first humans, had with God, all of a sudden got deformed. It wasn't as it should have been. And that was because Adam and Eve made a decision that God told them don't make. And so there was this beautiful tree in the garden where they lived. And God said, you can eat off any tree you like, just not that one. And so Eve and Adam, they became tempted and they ate from this tree, which God told them not to. And as they ate from this tree, this brought what we call sin into the world. And sin really is just our actions which go against God's agenda. Our actions which go against God's agenda. Our actions where we put ourselves first and God second. And so what you see through all human history is this defamation of a relationship with God because of sin and the actions that we take. It's why we live in a world where there's lots of injustice, where there's lots of poverty, where there's lots of equality, because of sin and the defamation that it causes to that perfect world that God created. So we were formed and then we were deformed. But thirdly, we were transformed. And we were transformed because straight after sin entered into the world, God came up with a plan. And the plan was to send his one and only Son, Jesus, into the world. And Jesus modeled, gave us a visible example of what God the Father looks like. And Jesus, as he walked about life, he went and he spoke and he worked with those on the very edges of society, those who had been neglected by the rest of the world. Jesus accepted them. Those who were not loved, Jesus decided to love them. Those who were never given opportunities, Jesus decided to give opportunities to. And what we see is when you have a life where you start to follow Jesus, your life becomes transformed. And we see that through the story that I read out to us this morning. You see these guys who were just everyday fishermen, going about their everyday life, doing the normal stuff. And then they meet Jesus, and Jesus says, "Follow me." And they leave everything behind. It even says about two of those brothers how they even left their father. They left their father and their job. They left their family behind, their jobs behind. They left everything behind to follow Jesus. And in following Jesus, what those guys then went and lived was they went and lived a greater life than what they could have lived without Jesus. They did incredible miracles. They saw incredible things. They saw Jesus do the most wondrous of things. They saw what it was like to go and reach out to those people that no one else would reach out to. And so for all of us, that's a life we can have too. If we decide to follow Jesus, our lives can be transformed. And not just as a one-off event, but continually transformed. I remember my own story as I became a sort of a Christian. I was probably a similar age to Daniel, who's just been up. And I remember as a child at that age, I was bullied in school, didn't really have very many friends, and I just felt alone. I used to go to bed of an evening, and most nights I used to cry myself to sleep, and I would hide myself under the covers so my mum couldn't hear me. Because when you feel alone, you often draw yourself to lonely places. That's what loneliness often does. And so I was under the sheets one night, I remember crying, and I was just like, "Hey, Jesus, little Andy here, help." And that was it. And then in that moment, I just felt this real kind of peace come upon my life. And so from that moment, my life was transformed. It was changed. And I remember even then in school, they asked that question, does anyone here go to church or believe God's real? Boom, hand straight up. Because my life had been transformed, it had been changed. I realized that my life was so much better with Jesus in it than when Jesus wasn't in it. I realized straight away that following Jesus was going to lead me to better ways and a better version of myself. And so God will meet you where you're at. He loves you so much that he'll meet you where you're at. But he also loves you too much to leave you that way. Because God has created you with a potential on your life, a potential that actually can only be activated when you follow Jesus. What you see in this story is these guys, they were fishermen, and they fished for fish. But then they were transformed and went to then fish for people. Something greater than what they were doing, something higher, something better. And on that journey, they became a better version of themselves as they then went to fish for people. And so our lives will be continually transformed. I remember for myself, one of the biggest issues I've had kind of growing up, and even as I've gone into my adulthood, is just really dealing with things of feeling abandoned. I'm feeling abandoned by people and by friends and in different areas of my life. And what I've came to realize is that in all of that, the one person who will never abandon me and can never abandon me is Jesus himself. Because Jesus, when he says, "Follow me," what he says at exactly the same time is, "Walk with me." Not just, "Hey, I am going to take the lead and I'll be your guide," but I'll also go at exactly the same pace that you go. I'll also walk right next to you, right beside you, every single step of the way, no matter where you're at. And so wherever you're at this morning, whether you feel in a state of hopelessness, whether you feel alone like I did or abandoned like I did, or feeling insecure and unloved and just got loads of questions about life, Jesus is one thing that will always be the same. When you accept his love, it's an unconditional love that is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's good yesterday, today, and forever. He wants better things for your life yesterday, today, and forever. And so there's a glorious plan and purpose for your life. And it all comes with an invitation of follow me. But it also comes with a leave the old stuff behind. And as we go into our baptisms, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that process. We're seeing 4 people who've been formed by God and then have been deformed by sin, but who've all been transformed by Jesus. And they're going to get up in a minute and share their stories of how they've came to faith. And what you'll notice in all of their stories is these aspects of transformation that's happened to get them here today. And because they're like all of us, like myself, like all of us, they're a work in progress. What you'll see as they get baptized is you'll see a real process of leaving the old behind and stepping into the new. What baptism kind of represents is it represents as you go down into the water, it's kind of like I'm making a grave for my old life. The life without Jesus, the life that came beforehand, that's left behind. And as I come back out of the water, representing like Jesus was resurrected from the dead to give us a picture of what eternal life looks like. As these guys come out of the water, that's that picture of I'm now stepping into that new life, that eternal life. Not an eternal life that starts once I die, but an eternal life that starts today. As they come out of the water, they then step into that life with Jesus.